Drainage Liaison Committee for Tuesday, August 8th. Roll call, please, Ms. Catherine.
Yes, sir. Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Barris?
Here.
Mr. Guidry is out of town this afternoon. Mr. Landry?
Here.
Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. White was unable to attend, and Chairman Scott.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. I would like to remind everyone in the audience to please silence any and all electronic devices, and if you would like to speak on our items tonight, please fill out a blue slip in the back and get it to Miss Jessica. With that, we'll move to item 3. Receive report from staff regarding the latest proposed revisions to Chapter 26 of the Code of Ordinances of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, pertaining to drainage standards. Mr. Beam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to summarize where we've been more recently with the Drainage Initiative, what we plan to cover this evening. On June 13th, staff formally proposed to this committee a set of drainage ordinance revisions as part of Chapter 26 of the Code of Ordinance. This was after substantial stakeholder engagement and a lot of public input. Later on June 29th, this committee met again to receive further public input in a public meeting on the proposed ordinances. And then more recently, on July 13th, the full police jury at your meeting were updated, and Alan also touched on at that meeting a few more recent revisions since June. There's not a lot of them, but in a moment I'm going to turn it over to Alan. He's going to go in a little more depth. I don't think that's going to take too long, but we'll certainly go from there. Right at the end of his, I've got one slide to cover on what we're recommending as far as tonight going forward, and of course any questions any of you or the public may have. So with that, I guess I would go ahead and ask Alan to cover, I think it's just one slide, but it's these, so I'm clear, these are the only things that we've actually changed at this point since the June 13th meeting where the ordinances were introduced, okay? And before I forget, Mr. Chairman, these, like previously, will be posted on the website, I think, at the conclusion of this meeting. So anybody can look, and with that, I'll ask Alan to cover those.
All right, Mr. Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. All right, so this is a really brief PowerPoint. Really is one new slide in here. There's 3 or 4 others just to get it going, but there's really one slide about the revisions we'll focus on. Just to remind everyone, this is about new development and performance standards that have been previously passed by the police jury as a goal of the new ordinance and the new code, so that everything we're doing is trying to meet these 3 things, which is really no net increase in runoff for new development, no net loss of the 100-year floodplain storage, and all new structures meet the minimum freeboard requirements. So the work inside the ordinance is just trying to accomplish these things, new development. Of course, everything is in Chapter 26, as Brian stated. You've seen this slide before. The actual revisions in its entirety affect these articles in the chapter, and where previously, I think total we had about 40 pages of changes in draft number 1. Draft number 2, if you print it out, the pages that actually changed again is about 17 or so pages. So we're just to give you some sense of kind of changes we've made since June 13th. So we are officially posting draft number 2 tonight. Of course, the changes have been based on our own review internally and a lot of feedback. So to just sort of really, it's just not every change, because of course we caught some typos and we caught a few clarifications, but this is to give you a sense of where the real changes are at, so that you can go there. When you look at the document that is posted, the best way to determine the new changes in the documents that are posted is in the margin, in the right margin, I provided a comment, which is going to take you, number 1, to the things that have actually changed, and number 2, give you a brief comment as to what we made the change for. Generally, many of them are just for clarification. And then you'll also see the ones that are more significant, like say the first one, a little bit more of a narrative of why we felt important to change. So you'll be able to see that as you go and really dig in and review the ordinance in whole. So first big change is the waiver system. We did discuss this at the full police year meeting, I believe. And really, like it says in the comments, I feel like this is going to be a simplified or simpler system to administer for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's very similar to what we had before. We've dropped the waiver list that we had before from 6 to 3, and we feel like it will get the right amount of review done. Again, the whole purpose of waivers is to avoid reviewing the smaller sites that reasonably can be expected to pay an impact fee and just move on versus trying to do on-site detention. So it tries to recognize that in establishing the waivers. Section 2 is reducing design requirements, and really the key here is when a particular development gets a waiver from the runoff management plan process, then in order to avoid any kind of double jeopardy would be to not go into the very next section in the ordinance structure and then have to do a significant amount of analysis after you've just received a waiver for your site. So we've felt like we have improved that. We're trying to minimize the additional analysis beyond getting the waiver. Although a few things have to be done to make sure that it fits within the neighborhood, whatever the development's going in. You want that to be as small work as possible. Number 3 is to reduce the survey requirements. Really, this is a very simple one. We have had it highlighted all along. Basically, new technology in the survey world and field allows it to be that, things like benchmarks and monuments, and I'm no surveyor. Maybe Tim can add it if you have questions. He'd probably have to answer. But at the end of the day, the new technology allows us to pinpoint these sites in a way that we don't really need all the benchmarks and monuments and things that we did in the past with older techniques of survey. And so we've gone ahead and revised those sections now. We've been carrying them along as needing to be revised all along. Fourth one is grading plan requirements and the build-out requirements. We've heard a lot of discussion about this one along the way, and how it might impact the upfront costs of a development. And we value that concern, and we're trying to minimize that, and at the same time minimize the problems that pop up post-construction if you don't do something about it in the pre-development thing. So we've revised this section to be less of a pre-build out, to find a middle ground, and we feel like it's going to help that front end cost a lot and will help us still avoid the pitfalls of one lot draining onto another lot, especially an existing lot, and having that unintended consequence of a brand new, newer development hurting an old development. So the fifth one really works hand in hand with that in trying to avoid that very common problem where an older existing lot adjacent to other lots is built on sort of last and is filled to a level that ultimately impacts the neighbors. These type of lots in that scenario typically would not go through a runoff management plan process anyway. They're basically a building permit typically for something like that. So we have added some language to suggest that you be more, I guess, neighborly when you build it on sites like that. And really the limiting factor there is to stop your fill material 5 foot from the property line. It's a common tactic in other communities to at least allow a strip between lots where the water can accumulate and run off to roadside ditches or wherever it's got to drain to, so that the fill material brought onto a lot is really just not brought all the way to the property line. So we try to find a way to minimize that problem that pops up all the time in a very, just giving guidance in essence. So again, those are the main changes. I think they're good. I think they, we surely can go into more detail about each and every one. Recommend everybody look at it, and then we go forward from there. They will be posted after this meeting on the website. I did notice one typo earlier where we called for that 5 foot. There's a word in there that's, the written word is 10. The number is 5. We're recommending 5. So that's my fault on the typo, but I did see it. I want to clarify it. I may not get to fix that before it's posted. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Brian for the timeline.
All right, thank you, Alan. Before I go over this slide, just preface it with a few comments that I think will help explain it. The content of the revisions, these ordinances revisions we've proposed, they've been thoroughly planned and vetted, and significant research, not only here, across the Gulf Coast and indeed nationwide, for best practices has been applied here in this whole initiative. Further, the components of these revisions are something we believe strongly are needed and needed soon. However, it is a lot of detail, and in discussions and meetings with members of the development community who, of course, are impacted by any of these type ordinances, more time is being requested. Therefore, we are proposing, and this is after I've discussed this with Chairman Scott, we are proposing that instead of taking action as a committee tonight, which was on the timeline from earlier meetings, that we extend or ask you as a committee to extend and the police jury the input period as on this slide. This will give us time for multiple meetings, which we've been advised would be helpful to go into more detail, more discussion of the technical side of these ordinances, how they're implemented, and those kind of things. We feel there's some room to do that, and we can do that over the course of the period that we are proposing here. And very briefly, let me just cover it. Tonight, of course, is August 8th. It's the Drainage Committee meeting. Our proposal would be that from after tonight's meeting through the end of September, September 30th, is to extend this period for the input and any discussions. And that's from anybody, not just the ones that are looking more detailed, but that's the ones we've been meeting with. This would lead up to coming back to you, this committee, on October 5th, which is a Thursday, to consider whatever actions at that time. We think it would, basically that would be the new date, if you will, where this committee, and whatever that you do, would recommend drainage ordinances revisions. And as before, I simply push back the timeline. All of these actions are already there, but now instead of later in August, October 17th, the Planning and Zoning Board would meet to take action, and then ultimately after that, the full police jury on October 19th. So we aren't asking action tonight for ordinances. We are asking that you approve going forward with this extension, and allows more time for discussion. And so
I'll make a motion to accept the new timeline.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? I have a motion to extend the timeline. Do I have a second? Any discussion?
I just want to make one comment.
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, thanks for making that recommendation. I think it's a prudent move. There are a lot of, in my opinion, issues that need to be discussed and moving forward. And we all realize, of course, that this is not an easy decision and a hard task to undertake. But the more input we get, I think the more knowledgeable we will get. And I think we can we please everybody? No, we can't. What we have to do is reach a happy medium. And I think that's a wise move. I thank you for your recommendation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will yield back.
Discussion.
Mr. McMillan.
Thank you. Number one complaint I get from my constituents is, when are y'all going to do something with the drainage in Calcasieu Parish? And we had a timeline set. We had other constituents that came to us and asked us to, hey, we're awake. We see what y'all are about to do. We want a little more input. We want a little more time. And I appreciate this committee and our staff saying, let's back this up a couple of months. Now, let's don't waste these 2 months. Let's don't come back here on the October 5th meeting and say, well, we should have said this, or I wish I'd have said that. It's time for us to really get down to the brass tacks and look at this thing, look at these ordinances and the revisions we need to make, and we need to move forward with something to make a real impact with our drainage in Calcasieu Parish. And with this, along with that, the next step's coming. I hope the cities will buy in right in behind us, because it's a parish-wide deal. And we got the floodplains out there. We're really trying to get in here and do the right thing and move forward. But we need public input. We need the people tonight to talk about these things. We need the Alliance to visit with us. Let's have meetings. Let's get this done. Let's make sure that when we come back a couple months from now, we've touched base, covered bases, and we can move forward with a plan, because the people of Calcasieu Parish are tired of waiting on what we're going to do about drainage. We need to get this moving. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Barris.
Thank you. Alan, you and I discussed this a while back, a week or so ago, that picture of one of the districts with the pins and the capital projects that have been identified, the street level projects that have been identified. I'd like to, maybe have a little more discussion with these folks, let them know that, hey, look, here's the beginnings of a viable plan, and maybe get some scope on some of these projects and share it with these folks so they know, hey, look, there's movement here. Not only this ordinance, but then there's a plan too to go with it. So I'd like to see a little more of that and hear a little more of that, and I know they would too.
Thank you, Mr. Barris. Any other discussion? With that, I have a motion and a second. No further discussion, no objections. That motion will carry. With that, we are going to move to the public comment period. Right now, I have 9 speakers. We would still like to end by 5:30. It's not a drop dead time. If this discussion is valuable and we consider to move forward in a progressive way, we can extend that. But right now, I'm going to go ahead, in order to make sure everyone gets time, I'm going to have to set about a 5-minute time limit on these 9 speakers. That won't count against you if there's questions asked by the jurors, or you have but some of it might be redundant, so try not to be redundant if it's already been said. But with that, I am going to move to, I'm not sure which one of y'all want to talk first. So I'll call out a name, and do y'all pass it along, or do I just off the list? Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman.
No, I mean.
I'll be happy to go first.
All right, so, no. All right, so we'll start with Mr. Matt Redd. And the last thing I'll say is, please make all comments and questions to the committee, and then from that point, the committee can follow up with anyone that can answer those questions. So, Mr. Rowan, if you could please keep track of the 5 minutes. I'll just let you know when you're getting close, but if you're in the middle of something, just feel free.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Matt Redd, 1424 Ryan Street. I'm the president of the Alliance for Positive Growth. First thing we want to acknowledge is Brian and Alan. We want to thank you all for this extension. We are, truly here to work with you guys, and we're not here to kill an ordinance. In fact, we're here to publicly say today that we do feel the ordinance is necessary. It's just the right time and the right ordinance. Our group is again grassroots stakeholders in this community. And we feel that, we've got a passion to see things fixed and see things fixed the right way. We want to be a part of the solution and certainly not part of any problems. We strongly feel that this ordinance, or not even the ordinance, the drainage problem, to fix the drainage problem, we've got to understand and look at the entire plan. And that plan includes the municipalities. It also includes the drainage districts. I'm going to ask again tonight. I strongly encourage that a recognized task force be put in place over the next 60 days. We'll start tomorrow morning to help y'all to understand this problem and to put the right steps in place to fix it. You've got a lot of situations, you roll your sleeves up and get in. Well, in this case, we're going to put our waders on and get in. And I really feel that the people that I've met with and talked to that know a whole lot more about this than me have a true understanding of this and can give the parish and the municipalities some free advice, doesn't cost anything, and they can help put this process in order. And again, I'm going to I urge that this task force takes place. As far as the municipalities go, I haven't reached out to all of them myself, but I did speak to Mayor Duncan, who's here tonight, and I'm going to ask him to come up in a few minutes to address y'all. I haven't spoke to Mayor Hunter, but for him to step out and say that drainage is his #1 initiative, I mean that tells me that we've got their interest, you know, and this is one item, guys, that or ladies and gentlemen, that does not stop at a parish line. It does not stop at a bonding district line. Water flows through, and we've got to address it that way. We really feel that the ordinance is necessary, but we've got to understand what the impacts are going to be and how it dovetails into your maintenance, into your capital improvement projects, and to truly get the right people in the room. And our goal would be in the next 60 days to come in here and have a unanimous decision with everybody to fix the drainage in our parish. Again, we're here to work with you, and we want to be a part of the solution for not only this problem and any other problems that come up. And I'm real appreciative of the conversations we've had over the last week. I'm appreciative of us working together, and I'll answer any questions that you guys have.
Yes, Mr. Angelbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, you mentioned a task force. Give me some kind of a base to shoot from what you're recommending.
Well, number one, this is not the format or the arena to dive into the details of this ordinance or any part of this solution. And so if you have a round table, so to speak, of engineers that are willing to talk and to provide information, the boots on the ground folks that are dealing with this water every day, contractors that understand, you know, their side of the page, the administration who has their knowledge, which is vast, and to bring that to the table. The cities have representation from the cities at this meeting, and they're willing to do it. Or they've told me they are. Not all of them, but 2 of the 5, and I think the other ones will certainly come along. And the gravity drainage districts. And look, guys, I'm going to say this, and the 800-pound gorilla in the room is a consolidation, and I am not up here promoting it, but it's got to be discussed. And it's got to be, you know, why or why not, and there could be some collaboration from a lot of different areas, which affects the money, and it affects what's fixed first, and then how this ordinance ties into it. But to come out and as one of our members said, to put an ordinance in place and try to build around that, that's just not the way, in my mind or our mind, the way to fix it. It's understand the problems, where they are, how they are, and the ordinance is going to dovetail right into it. And we're here to help y'all for free. And a task force, I'm not going to be on it. I'm not smart enough to be on it. But there's people that know a whole lot more about this than I do. And I think that we could very quickly put a group together that can help. We get this done in 30 days. Okay. If you put and with the right knowledge base, you can do it. And there's some smart people in Calcasieu Parish.
Thank you, Matt. How do you go back, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Landry.
You know, of course, we've been doing this for 3 years, and I know y'all haven't been involved that long. But, you know, you can call it a task force or whatever you want to call it, but I don't see us creating some other entity. We'll meet as many times as y'all want to meet with whoever you want to meet, whoever you want to be there, and that's great. But to create I don't know that we need to create anything. I mean, it's kind of already here. One other thing that you touched on, You're talking about the management of the system. That's the next thing that we're going to address. Believe me, what we're doing and what we've been doing is in an orderly fashion. We haven't gotten to that yet. Yeah, that'll be a political thing. There'll be people that don't want to do that. Whether you're for it or not, I don't know. But, you know, it's going to be addressed, but we hadn't got there yet. And we chose to do all of the things that we're doing in the order that we're doing them in. This committee and the full police jury voted on doing all of these things in the order that we're following. So I agree with you. That is an important part of it. You can't ignore that. And you can't truly address all these issues and fix the problem unless you look at the management of the system. And, you know, just off the cuff, if you were creating all of this from scratch, it probably wouldn't, the management side of it wouldn't look like it looks now. I mean, there's reasons, of course, that it is the way it is, and the reasons that those districts were first formed, but, you know, we're going to deal with that. It's just, we got to bite this thing off one piece at a time. So it's coming. We are going to deal with that.
Well, Chris, I mean, where I respectfully disagree with you is that they dovetail into each other. And the ordinance is not the ground zero.
Well, they do. They all are going to fit together, sure.
Well, exactly. But there's some brilliant minds in this town. And why wouldn't you take the next 60 days to bring, the next 5 days to get those guys in a room?
And we're open to that. We want to do that.
Well, so, yeah, why wouldn't you bring them in and recognize them, okay? And they're not going to have authority or power. It's the same thing you did with Vision Calcasieu. I don't know if you were on the jury at that time, but you know, they put a group of 15 people together from different segments, and they had a series of meetings, and it was discussed and chewed up and spit out and redone, and it came out. I thought we had a pretty good product, and so this is so important. You know, it's more important than that. But it's the fact that you've got the other. You know, water doesn't stop at the lines, and to have that representation and to bring those brilliant minds in the room is critical in my mind.
All right, well then, I would suggest the first thing that your group does, come up with who y'all want to be involved in the meetings.
Okay, Keith. Well,
And I mean, we'll be happy to meet with, like I said, with anybody, as many times.
great.
If it takes 60 meetings in the next 60 days, then that's what we're going to do.
We're here to work with you on that, and again, we're ready to go.
Sounds good.
Mr. McMillan?
Yeah, you know, we all got busy jobs and doing things, and we want to do as much as we can to get to drainage, but we've got a really good staff. And Alan, I don't know if you have time to do this, but I know a lot of times when I go to it, Dane probably sees me looking directly at him, that he helps me put these type task force together. And Brian, I don't know who maybe you would appoint from the staff, but I think the parish may need to take the lead on getting this task force together. And we as jurors would try to be there as often as we could be. But I agree with Matt. We got some great minds out here. You know, it reminds me back to the High Hope scenario when it was flooding out there, and the engineers would say one thing and the people would tell me another. You just have to listen to the people sometimes, and they want their voices heard on this drainage. And they've lived there for 40 years and said the water did this, and we were saying something else engineer-wise. We got to listen to the people. So I'm maybe asking, Brian, I would ask you, whether it be Dane or somebody from your staff, Alberto, or somebody to help us put a task force together, have these roundtable type discussions, and let's give this voice an opportunity to be heard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McMillan, if I can put down my chair for 1 second. This parish, over the past 3 years, has been a task force. This parish, over the past 3 years, has got more involved up until today's date. We have more passion about it. We have more knowledge about it. To build a task force for the namesake of a task force, to know I met with you, I feel is it's just a title. I think if people really want to be involved, we have had an open door continuously. I think we're, just like Mr. Landry said, anytime, anywhere, let's get them together. That's why we're doing this. So you can call it what you want, but to say put one person, and I disagree with Mr. McMillan on that, we are doing that. And I don't know why somebody would have to say you're calling them a task force to take off work and come up here and meet with us. I take off work to come up here and meet with people all day long. That's what I have to do. So I agree to disagree. I think we are being a task force in what we're doing, and we want information, and I'll leave it at that. Mr. Red?
Well, I think the information you're bringing to yourself is fragmented, and you may, y'all have some of that information, and yes, you're the ultimate task force, okay? But why not have a free set of advisors? Why not have a group of people that are recognized in the community as understanding this problem, come to you and give you some free advice, and organized way, not one piece at a time, not somebody that's got 2 inches of water and somebody that has no water, okay, or 6 foot of water. My street's flooding. Some people, a lot of things people don't understand, and all I'm getting at is, and what we've been, if we had stepped back 3 months and created this 3 months ago, we'd hopefully be here today voting on this. But again, it's pretty simple. There's some brilliant minds in this town that are willing to help you for free, and bring the municipalities in, bring the drainage districts in at the same organized professional meetings, and give you some good free advice.
Well, I would love for you to get that task force together with the cities and anybody you can get of these brilliant minds and set up that meeting so we can all be there. We're ready.
Well, and we are too.
So get that task force together. I'm okay with it. Mr. Beam.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to try to address, so we can, y'all have to decide on these kind of issues. I'm glad Mr. Red brought up if we'd have done this 3 months ago. Actions speak louder than words. We did this 3.5 months ago. Okay, let me remind everybody that not only did we hope, we reached out, and this goes back much longer. I'm talking about the latest round, and I'm saying this to try to address what Mr. Red's brought up, because it's good issues, but I want to make sure we're clear on what's already happened. Back, I think it was April 13th, and this goes back to the drainage districts and cities, which we've been working with very much. Alan can give you details. We went through all of these ordinances, so how it affects drainage, they've been involved earlier and much recently. So on April 13th, we actually went through all the draft ordinances at the time. This is before we came to your committee in June. 2 weeks later, not even 2 weeks later, April 24th, in that week, as part of our ongoing stakeholder input, we set up the meetings, invited, and many came, not only from the Alliance for Public Positive Growth, but others. Engineers, and all the same people. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we have done all the things that I'm hearing that he's asking y'all to do, and I guess not, and that's why we're extending it. Whatever hasn't happened, we're saying, look, let's finalize it now. But I cannot go without stating some key information. Those were the meetings where we want you, and we want anybody you bring that knows anything about this to be there. And so a lot of them have showed up, and I guess what I'm wondering is, what have we missed? And let's continue that. But I think, I really don't want the public thinking we haven't taken this approach. And you don't, I'm just giving my opinion, you don't need a task force for that, because we've already done it and continue to do it. And I don't know who the task force would be. We have, not only have we asked, we've really sought out. Matter of fact, all of the local engineers have gone to our meetings. They've given input. We've gotten help, and Alan can cover all that. But I think there's a big gap that's not being said here, and I want to make sure everybody knows that. This is a positive thing. I hope, I'm very optimistic we can work through the issues, but we gotta, I don't know where that gets you. We've gone beyond all of that. We've actually gone more outside of the scope of that. So I don't want to delay it with creating more committees and task forces that we already have the same people there, and we're ready to meet next week and keep going, just like you said. Obviously, that's your call, but this creates another infrastructure.
Can Mr. Red wrap up, and then you, or you
Well,
want to say
may I
it
address
first?
it,
Okay, Mr. McMillan.
Thank you.
Let's let Mr.
And
McMillan.
a couple things. That's a good thing about democracy. We can agree to disagree, and it's okay. And Brian, I'm not saying we haven't done everything we could possibly do to this point. If we were ready to vote on it tonight. But we have 2 more months. So we step back and kind of look and say, okay, what can we do to make sure now in these next 2 months that we have buy-in and we have input from everybody else that may have thought, wow, I didn't see this coming, and now I see it coming. So that's the point that I'm talking about. How do we tweak this? Whether we call it a task force, roundtable discussions, sideline discussion, I know we've done them, but here's our 2-month opportunity to make sure that we bring everybody the same song, same verse, same team. That's what I'm looking for. Now, for the guidance from that, I would usually look to staff. We as part-time elected officials do all we can do and try to meet as much as we can. But I need staff's help. If they get the names, we get the manpower, we get them together, I'm all for sitting around and saying, okay, look, let's take another hour, 2 hours, 3 hours and have discussions to see what's our path forward. And out of those meetings will come action items that maybe it was something we overlooked or didn't overlook or it wasn't talked about in a meeting. We've got a golden opportunity here of 2 more months of time to really tweak this thing and move forward and get everybody's buy-in. But I don't want any delay when it comes to October because my constituents are saying, let's do something. I'm tired of hearing and studying and hearing about these meetings and having these study groups. It's time to move forward. So I'm with you 100%. I hope that's what I mean. And look, that's what I mean. I mean, it's let's move forward in the next 2 months with some type, roundtable, task force, whatever. But let's utilize the people we can get to come up. They're hearing our plea. It's kind of a plea to the public. Let's do it. Here's your chance. Here's your opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Landry.
Okay, to Mr. McMillan. But if we've already invited the engineering community, we've already invited the cities, the elected officials have come at all those different meetings that we've had. My point is, I don't know who else to invite. We've invited everyone, so that's why I told Mr. Red, if he has a group of people that he knows about that are interested and willing to come, I would say let them come up with the folks that they want to be there. I mean, we've already invited and met with many of those people.
I agree.
So I don't
then
know
our
who
staff
else
should
we
do
could
that.
invite that we hadn't invited. So are we, I don't know, are we on the same page or not?
Can I respond, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
sure, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Back to the point. There's people out there that have now woke up to what's about to happen, and they want an opportunity to have their voice heard. And whether we had those meetings in the past or whatever, now's our time. Now's our window of opportunity to restart, re-kickstart this thing, to get everybody heard again, because they just heard it when we were talking about this, and that's why I had some pushback on voting on this tonight. I wanted an extension, and we came up with an extension. That was a good thing. Whether, who up here wanted it, who didn't want it, whatever, we have it now. And while we have it, don't squander it. We got to do something. We got to get the people re-engaged, re-involved, and have these meetings over the next 2 months. That way, when October, whatever, 5th comes, I have no problem in voting yes, we're moving forward, because that's the direction we have to go, and everybody's had a timeline to do it. So, I don't know if I answered your question, Chris, but they want to be heard again.
In one word, no.
Oh, yeah.
It sounded good.
I know.
Well, I mean, the
I would
staff is
add-
going to need to know, what do you want
Well,
to do?
Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman,
Mr.
if you don't
Bean, go
mind
ahead.
trying to help, I
You trying
think.
to help this?
I'm asking the staff.
No, what
to
I'm
help
asking,
us.
We're beyond
I
him.
think what Hal's recommending as far, if you have names, any of you, what we need to know is who is saying, look, I need to catch up. We want them there, and we're saying, if you haven't been involved, okay, that's fine. Let's be. We want to do that. We have to know who they are. Please, I'm just asking,
And I still have.
turn it into us, turn it into one of the jurors who will get it to us, and
Okay.
we want to include them.
Thank you.
We're ready. We want to
Thank
do
you,
it.
Brian, and I would come back to you now, Mr. Red. Could you help build that group of people?
Absolutely. No, we would be,
If you could get that to us, and then we
Certainly.
could
We'll
get with
get
our
it to you,
staff, and
you
we could start
in a
coordinating.
very short order. And I'll go ahead and Brian, I'll tell you that for y'all to have as much information as you say you have, hell, we may be done in a week. okay? And that'd be great.
We want to give it its
But
due, though.
it's, let's get these people together. And you know, I'm not going to sit here and, you know, I'm not one to talk about the past, okay? And how we got here is what we got here. But let's move forward. Let's simply move forward. And we're here to help y'all. And we're as transparent as can be. We're not trying to kill anything or stop anything. We want to fix our drainage. And that's the bottom line. And we think this is the way to go about it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Red. Now you know I had to put a 5-minute time limit.
Right, yeah.
They
On
they
5.
stretch. So, thank you, Mr. Red.
I would recognize that Mayor Duncan is here and would like to follow up with cities involved.
I'll let, if he gets the pink slip, I still need a pink slip from him, so, you know.
It's blue, but.
Blue, pink. Blue slip.
I didn't know you were
Yeah,
colorblind.
give me the blue slip so that I can let him speak next. Mr. Barris.
Thank you. Going back to how we let people know and people didn't know about it, I guess I don't know what else. Maybe we could get a, you know, the plane with the long banner or something, that maybe something, that's another way of letting people know about these meetings and inviting them, because I mean, you know, I hate to think that our communications, you know, skills aren't that good. You know, I think we've done a lot of that, and I just want to make sure that that is stated.
We'll certainly continue to put everything out there so everybody knows there's time for input, so we'll continue.
All right, with that, we'll bring up Mr. Ralph Louie. He'll be next.
Ralph Louie, 2001, Charvet, Lake Charles, Louisiana. Member of APG, and I head up the Drainage Committee, along a co-chair with Chris Corey. Just to elaborate a little bit more about the task force, and the purpose behind it is that, and I think Brian and them understand where we're coming from on this, is that you cannot have the kind of discussions that we need to have on drainage in an open, public, roundtable agenda. I mean, I thought that we had some really good discussions here in the last few days. And, I mean, those are the kind of agendas that we have to get into so that the data and the information that's out there, it can be extrapolated and compiled, and each person render their opinion, you know. And that's the whole purpose of a task force, is for each person to be able to render their opinion and their thoughts on this. And at the end of the day, you take the good points of everything that's out there. And at the end of the day, everything that Alan and them's done might be the good points. We don't know. But at the end of the day, you walk out of there with a consensus. Will everybody be happy? Absolutely not. Will a lot of people out here be happy? Some of them will be happy and some of them won't. But at the end of the day, the public sector and the business people of this community, and that's who ultimately you work for. I mean, that's it. You know, I mean, that's the whole purpose of the police jury and the administration is to facilitate the public's needs and the business community. And that's all that's being asked, is for us to sit down. We do have people that we want to put with Alan on this task force. I think the city does, Lake Charles, the Sulphur. Other people want to get involved. Let them sort through this. And like I said, at the end of the day, if this is it, then that's what it is. But when it's voted on, everybody's going to have a good understanding of it. And that's all we're asking for. You cannot have these kind of discussions with all the information that's out there unless it's compiled at one time in one place to where these people can discuss it. You can't have an open agenda where it's an abbreviated form of what's being proposed. There's too much data out there that needs to be accumulated. It's here, and that's all we're asking. Give us that information. Let us formulate this task force and let's get on with this, and in 60 days, we can come back. Is that the end of it? No. I mean, this is an ongoing problem, just like the discussions we had last night. I mean, we'll be having these discussions for a good while before we sort this problem out 100%. But at least we can get started in the right direction. At least the public will have had their say-so on it. It will be vetted, and we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion from the jurors. With that, Mayor Duncan.
Chairman Scott, thank you for being here today and extending the time frame. Sulphur, we want to work with you. I mean, we have to work with you. We have drainage ditches and drainage laterals that, whether they're parish, whether the federal government with Bayou Den and all them other areas that flow through us, you know, we all have to work together. I know that I called the meeting and had Judd there, had Francis there, had Les there, just to discuss some concerns that we have about Little Bayou Den, and Shoe Peak Bayou, and some actions that we're taking on that. But we all have to work together. We have to pool our resources together. We all know that, whether it's the federal level, state level, or local level. We all have to do this. Extending this time frame, allowing the group to get together with you is going to help. We're willing to sit at the table also to discuss this. We're still requesting some data from the parish as well as the state and the federal government on some concerns that we have in our area. We all know that water is supposed to drain from the north to the south. Sometimes, believe it, it flows from the south to the north. It just depends upon tidal surge and the wind direction and things like that. You know, there was a meeting held in Sulphur when a gentleman got up and told you Shoe Peak Bayou actually drained north sometimes. I mean, it's true. You got to get out there. You got to get out there at the scenes when this happens. You think me as a mayor doesn't do that? I have my rubber boots. I have a shovel. I have a hoe, and I got a pitchfork in the back of my car. And when it rains, I know the problem areas. I'm out there with my work crews doing that, you know, getting those ditches unclogged, getting them drained. We started a major program. I know Francis has probably gotten some phone calls off of this. Maybe Les has on some ditches we're cleaning where nobody wants their ditch cleaned, you know, but you got to do it in order to get the water to flow. Like Bubba down the road will call in a complaint, but then when you look at the grade on it, Bubba's high, and Bubba's got to come down a little bit, and then he doesn't want his ditch cleaned in front of this house. He said, I'm complaining about them, I'm not complaining about mine. You know, these are the things that we all have to deal with out there, and we have to come to a common consensus in order to get this. So we do appreciate you extending this, and look forward to where the direction goes.
Any questions from the jurors? You mind if I ask a question? Reading the Chapter 26 revisions that we are discussing, do you feel like they are out of line with what you have been as a mayor with the LMA and all these other municipalities? Is this something that the city of Sulphur totally can't understand, or is it something that you realize there need to be some changes made?
There need to be some changes done. Is it perfect? I can't answer that question. I don't have that crystal ball. The word hydrologist isn't here. There's a gentleman here in the audience, Jonathan, that's been feeding me a lot of data on rainfall. You know, the current rainfall that we have. He just sent me a report today on it. I mean, y'all need to seriously look at the rainfall. Look at them totals. Look at the amount that comes down intensity in that. You know, we're in the process of pulling culverts out of some streets and oversizing them in some streets. We actually pulled one out this past week, and we're just waiting on a rainfall to see how it's going to affect that area and that. I mean, these are things that we all know. These culverts were put in based 40 and 50 years ago. We have to get these culverts up to the 21st century, and you got to take baby steps on them and that. We are constantly reviewing the changes that are set forth. I heard that there were some more changes tonight, so we'll go back and print and relook and reevaluate and get with our people and go from there.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Any other questions? Thank you, Mayor Duncan. Mr. Wainwright, you want to comment on our rain gauges or our culvert replacement or anything real quick? Or nah, you good? I mean,
I'm
I
good.
know we're getting lots of data.
I'm good.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll go to Mr. Abear. Name and address, please, sir, for the record.
Well, I'm familiar with this procedure. Randy Aber, 706 Live Oak Street, Sulphur, Louisiana. I've had the opportunity to watch as Sulphur struggled, and over the last 5 years, we flooded a whole lot more down the middle of Sulphur than we have previous 20, 30, 40 years. And one of the things that I think is driving it is the neighborhood that we took over from the police jury. We annexed the area south of Sulphur by their request. And at that time, there was a 5,000 square foot lot limit. And some of those people have even come in and asked for 3,000 because of location, corners, and stuff like that. And I'll work with the city of Sulphur to try to get that stopped. But when you look at an acre of land, which is 43,560 square feet, and you're putting 5,000 square foot homes on it, that's 8.7 homes per lot. Where if you went to 6, like Sulphur, that would be 1 less home per acre. And if you Sulphur and the police jury tightened it up to 7,000, then we're looking at about 7 3/4 homes per acre. And I can't believe that I haven't read this ordinance yet. I don't know if that anybody who has bullied y'all more on Facebook than myself. And I've hammered you guys like crazy, and nobody said, hey, Randy, have you read the ordinance yet? No, send it to me. Nobody. And really and truly, I can't believe, and I'm not hiding. Francis knows how to get a hold of me. Hal knows how to get a hold of me. I'm not hiding by no means. But until I get my hands on the ordinance, I really want to see what y'all have in mind. And I really do appreciate this extension and giving us the time to look at it. I'll even join up with Matt Ritt and work with those guys and help them read through it and figure out what's going on. But I heard all the information about it was available here. We had meetings here, meetings there. I've got the police jury on priority on my Facebook feed. I see everything y'all do. And I don't recall one post coming across that says, here's the drainage ordinance. So think about that when y'all are working your networks. We are part of that network. Matter of fact, we're at the top of that network when you look at the organization chart. Thank you.
Mr.
Well, ready to
McMillan.
come back.
Yeah, Mr. Abear.
Mr. Abear, you can stay there, but I would go to Mr. Wainwright. We do have it on the website, isn't it?
Yes, sir. The
CPPJ.net.
previous versions are posted, and this will be posted as soon as this is over with.
The previous versions are posted, and
The draft number 1 was the only other one, so I mean, correct that statement. Draft number 1 is posted, it's been there since June 13th. Tonight or this evening, when this is over with, Tom will post the current draft number 2.
CPPJ.net.
Right. And I give that out like candy to lots of people. I refer people to y'all all the time. And I just about got Jennifer Wallace's email address remembered. But y'all really need to utilize the social networks and just give us information. It don't matter if we read it or not. You can say, hey, on such and such a day, we send it out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Ms. Jeannie Wise. Oh, all right, well, Mr. Tim Flavin.
I
I was trying to save you till last so you could kind of.
I don't want to be confused. I'm not as good looking as Miss Wise, but Tim Flavin, 2704 Nottaway, the Ordinance Committee Chair of the APG. I wanted to thank the committee for your time, your attention in several of the meetings going back and forth. I think Mr. Anderpont, in his wisdom, probably said it the best out of all the meetings. He said it's all about communication. And what has happened here, we know you've been working on it for 3 years, and we appreciate that. The problem is, and I've been to most of those meetings over that 3-year period, but until you take action, you can talk about it for 10 years and nothing is going to happen. Nobody will respond. But 3 months ago, you took action. And our group had 9 pages of questions that we submitted, and we didn't get one answer. We didn't get one answer of any of those questions. Now, what we did get was an ordinance that was changed somewhat, redlined, and said these are the changes. So we had to go through the I can't remember how many pages, 135, I think it is, to find out what was changed, what wasn't changed, this and that. So I think with Mr. Anderpont, I loved his wisdom, because what has been going back and forth here, we're just, I think, have moved too quick. You say, well, where have you been for the last, 3 years? Well, 2 years and 9 months, we saw PowerPoints and we listened to presentations, and you have a number of people in the development community, engineering community. They're concerned because they've got to work with you. They're concerned about saying too much. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them. I'm going to, try to say it like it is or whatever. But we appreciate the extension. I can tell you our group will be here, and whether we call it, I don't care what you call it, it's what I'd like to call it is communication, and to have that ability to communicate further, to come up with the best plan. And again, not to say anything that the staff and administration, they've done a great job in taking it and moving forward. I was at a property that I managed till 1 o'clock in the morning, pushing the water out of it that flooded. It's a 70-year-old building that was remodeled, and nothing changed other than the drainage that's happening downtown Lake Charles, okay? In a 6-inch rain, well, you can say, well, that's going to happen. It hadn't happened 70 years prior to that night, at 1 o'clock. So I understand the importance of an ordinance, representing the APG. I think we also, and personally, understand that we need some changes. We need some drastic changes. But we're also interested in the entire plan, not just doing this right now, and we'll look at this later. What we want to do is look at it all together and come up with the best plan and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flavin. Any discussion from the jurors? With that, Mr. Charlie Atherton.
Charlie Atherton, 122 Vine Street. We just feel like, I think Matt Red pretty well nailed it. I think these ordinances are a little bit premature. I don't know what me and Mr. McMillan, why are we on the same page? Something.
Don't ever agree, Charlie.
Lightning is going to
You must be wrong.
Lightning is going to.
I must be wrong.
Man. But what we're asking is that you actually assemble a true drainage stakeholder committee. Now, I served on both estuary task forces, and my involvement was initially driven by the need to be able to dredge Bayou Den and Bayou Shoe Peak to help drain the city of Sulphur. And this has been a long process. It took long-range planning, but today I'm of opinion that Bayou Den can be dredged. Now, 40 years ago, there were discussions of putting pumps on both bayous, and those discussions have recently resurfaced now that the chemical contamination has been addressed. And the city of Lake Charles has been draining the city with pumps for a long time. And if there was pumps on Contraband Bayou, their life, I believe, would be much better today. But what we're asking is this jury to gather together all local, federal, and state stakeholders to come up with a long-term parish-wide drainage master plan that is guaranteed to work. Our concern with these proposed drainage ordinances is we basically feel we're just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic because the ship is sinking. These proposed ordinances are an attempt to control the tide and water level in the rivers, bayous, and lakes by keeping the water out. When you tell landowners they have to keep rainwater on their land, you're admitting the water has nowhere to drain to because the tide is too high, so you want to spread the water out and not drain it. All at the landowner's expenses, taking land out of commerce, creating liabilities and health issues. You are trying to control the tide when you charge landowners an impact fee for draining their property directly into the ship channel or other tidal controlled waterways. The water level in the ship channel is not locally controlled. It's controlled by subsidence, sea level rise, the moon, the south wind, but also by northern parishes and states. We need to have a drainage system that totally drains the parish like it should drain if the ship channel is 15 feet lower, and then we can figure out how to move the water after it gets where it was supposed to be before the ground sank. A drainage plan that does not manage the tide is of little benefit to West Calcasieu. Now, this thing has been going on for years, but we're asking what we would like to have would have been a motion to postpone indefinitely these ordinances, and then for you to assemble a true drainage stakeholder committee. But when you talk about a true stakeholder committee, you got to involve the SRA, you got to involve the pipelines, the railroads, DOT, the Port of Lake Charles. All of these people are impacting drainage. You got to get them all together. You got to get the state and federal agencies that can bring solutions, education, cooperation, expertise, funding, studies, historical documentation, equipment, materials, political help, satellite mapping. You got to have DOT, USGS, ACE, DEQ, NONA, QIPRA, and then all of the local people. The drainage problem in Calcasieu Parish is a statewide problem all across southwest Louisiana. So what we're dealing with here, the state is having to deal with all the way across. So unless you can address the tidal issue to keep Shoe Peak Bayou from flowing backwards in the same way with Bayou Den, then we don't have a master plan. But if you really look at the ordinances you have, they certainly, from a high level view, appear to be trying to control the tide because you're saying there's nowhere for it to go. So I'm just curious, are you guys aware of what the estuary task forces, that they existed? And I'm just wondering if you realize you actually own one of them. Because that task force had some success stories. And it was formed to basically to deal with the contamination in the estuary, but also to make it to where the existing laterals, Bayou Verde, Bayou Den, Shoe Peak Bayou, Bayou Olson, where these waterways can be utilized for draining the parish. And I agree with Hal head on. If you get all the appropriate people, come up with a long-range plan, involve these agencies that can bring funding and help and expertise in identifying the total parish-wide problem, I think you can build on the success of your past estuary task force committee. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I know you're pressed for time.
Well, Mr. Bears.
Well, I just have a comment based on the, just the part about dredging the Bayou Den, and Mayor Duncan can speak to this. The Gravity Drainage District, along with the Sheriff's Office, have taken the Sheriff's sonar boat, and they started for this purpose. They wanted to, get a measuring stick and see where it's at. So we're not totally done with it, but just I'll give you some of the early data that we've gotten. You go from the mouth of the ship channel in Bayou Den and all the way up to Highway 108. That's as far as they've managed to get for right now. and this sonar is pretty impressive. As it passes a tributary, whatever, it will shoot. It shoots a 200-foot radius. And so as it passes a tributary, it can see, it has the ability to see up into those as well. And so right now today, as it stands, Bayou Dend is averaging about 14.5 feet deep from 108 all the way to the mouth of the channel, and it's wide open. So just letting you know, those types of things are in the works, but
Right, and then when I was on the task
Bayou,
force,
is Shoe
when
Peak
I was
Bayou
on the
gonna be
task
like
force,
that?
our biggest
What's that?
concern.
I got.
Let him finish.
Go ahead.
Now, is Shoe Peak Bayou going to be like that? I don't know. Probably, I don't suspect, but because it has no traffic. I think the one saving grace for Bayou Dend is the fact that it has traffic in and out of it. Shoe Peak Bayou doesn't, Brandon ditch, not enough to withstand the ship traffic. But
Right.
I just wanted to let you know that those types of things and that type of data are on the way.
Right, but more, to add information, when I was on the task force, one of the biggest concerns that we have concerns with, and I don't know what the end result was, and that was, they didn't remove the settlements further up the bayou at the end of the cement ditch. They just covered them up with a concrete cap. And in the task force meetings, we demanded that they not cap them unless the level was low enough to properly drain the city. But sometimes they don't listen. So at the end of the day, you may find that when they cap this up on the sides, all the way down with concrete cap, you may find that has somewhat restricted the drainage. I don't know what the outcome of that. But no, but the point is, it took a task force, and we started 40 years ago, 35 years ago, and it's still in progress, which what Mr. Red said. You put a task force together and deal with this thing forever, but you got to have a master drainage plan. You can't just come in and start spreading out water and having the landowners pay for it. Because you're taking our land out of commerce. But I appreciate your time.
Thank
And
you,
I
Mr.
appreciate, it's important to also recognize, like people before me said, that this jury has been working diligently to try to work on a parish-wide solution for the plan. Just haven't included enough people. And a 3-minute discussion at the microphone is not the proper format for an open discussion to debate the issues and come up with a priority list. And again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. I am going to speak to the state and federal issue just briefly, mainly because I sat in a 4-hour meeting today. Just a pilot program for Vermilion Parish watershed, which is the Mermentau watershed, which is where we drain some of our water. A pilot program the state is putting together, $25 million, maybe 5 to 6 years. We can't wait to do something in 5 to 8 years at a $25 to $28 million study. Whenever we've been studying and we have different ways of different practices to be able to kind of correct some of our own problems. In a meeting with FEMA last week, I was clearly told, the money you receive today in mitigation funds, that will be taken away if you don't start spending your own money and showing us that you're trying to fix your own problems. So we do have a bigger boss to answer to, and we all hate it. We all want smaller government, but I think local government does the best job. So to say I want to wait for a 5-year, $25 million study on the Vermilion Mermentau watershed, which we shed into, which they'll draw a line on paper, just like we know it doesn't stop there, but it's not going to venture into Calcasieu for us to know what it's actually doing where we're pouring into the Mermentau, unless we pony up maybe $5 million to get just that small piece put into their 8 to 5 year study. So, we have a lot of issues that we deal with, but I can tell you there are big discussions going on from state, federal levels, and so we're not crazy enough to think that Beauregard and Allen do not affect us. We're talking about drainage right now, not water quality. That has to be discussed also as we move forward, because the federal government is insisting you drain good water, not water. It's got to be clean when it leaves. So there's a lot of things happening at the federal level that we're trying to figure out how to work out. So since Mr. Atherton brought it up, I at least wanted to speak to that. With that, we'll go to Mr. Dan Rhodes. We do have 4 more speakers, but like I said, we're going to go beyond 5:30, so everybody relax.
Yeah, I won't speak long. Dan Rhodes, 290 North Perkins Ferry Road, Lake Charles, actually Moss Bluff. I think we need drainage. I think that's the major problem we have is drainage. Parish-wide drainage, that's what we need. Over the years, there's been ditches, it's filled with mud, doesn't drain anymore. For years and years, culverts put in too small or too high that doesn't drain the property. I've spent time, my own time, taking pictures and videos of problems on North Perkins Ferry Road and Moss Bluff and other areas in Moss Bluff. My home's never flooded. I've never had a flood in my home. But there's people that I've talked to and seen that live in my neighborhood that has had water and continues to get water in their homes. On July the 22nd, I sent an email to all police jurors with email addresses. There's 2 or 3 that doesn't have email addresses, with 19 pictures attached, colored pictures that I took showing stormwater holding pond in Orleans Run subdivision that there was approximately 5 to 6 inch rainfall. The stormwater pond flooded. The water run out to about a 24-inch culvert, I think it is. The North Perkins Ferry Road, there's no proper drainage. Sanctuary Church on North Perkins Ferry Road, the whole parking lot all around the church flooded. These are all in pictures, color pictures. I don't know if I'm going to say this right. Pentangle Square subdivision, which is bordering Orleans Run subdivision, which the lots there are lower because Orleans Run, when they dug the stormwater pond, they built up all this property. Those lots have no problem, but the runoff from those lots are affecting the lower lying subdivision around it. And with a big, fast, heavy rain, the water doesn't seep in the ground, it runs off. That's a fact. The stormwater pond fills up, backs up, and floods areas around it. After sending this email to each police juror, I received a response from one police juror, Mr. Bears, is it? Bears? I
Mr.
don't
Chairman,
know if I'm
you
saying
know,
it right.
this is not going to be a meeting for personal attacks.
This is not a personal attack, this is actually a fact. Mr.
Stick
Rhodes,
to the ordinance.
go back to selling bottle rockets. That's his response to flooding, people getting flooded in their homes. Here's a copy of the email right here. Mr. Rhodes, go back to selling bottle rockets.
This is outside the scope.
Your emails. That is in the scope.
All right, well, thank you.
That's all
Mr.
I have
Rhodes.
to say.
That's all right. You done? All right. Any discussion?
Yeah, discussion.
Yeah, Mr. McMillan?
And Mr. Wainwright, you received those pictures, and I know you're working on trying to solve those problems, correct?
I'm very familiar with that entire area. It's been a
Yeah.
problem.
You are
for-
addressing that. I don't want it to go
Well, I
like
don't want you
untold,
to-
like we're not addressing.
I don't want you to be misled. That is a long-term problem that was created over a long, long time.
Right.
In the core, I'm gonna make this statement. The core of the reasoning behind good growth and development standards is because I go out to places like that when it rains, and you can't fix those problems after they're built. That's the bottom line. It's the reason why you do good standards. That's the reason why we're asking to do this first, to stop building bad projects, to stop hurting people who are adjacent to these projects. I don't want to stop growth and development, but we have to quit hurting ourselves.
Yeah, and I wanted you to have that opportunity because I know we've addressed this before. We are trying to solve these type problems with some of this redesign of this Chapter 26 and what we need to do to move forward. And every time that we receive emails like that, I make sure they are forwarded and copied to our staff so our staff can see them. And I know this has been a long withstanding problem we are trying to address. So I didn't want that to go unnoticed that we're not trying to address that. So thank you, Mr. Wainwright. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With any other? Mr. Tommy Eastman.
Tommy Eastman, 2330 South Kingswood, Lake Charles. I did want to thank y'all for giving the extension. I know that everybody, this has been a total and complete cluster when it just comes to what everybody knows and what people don't know and all that stuff. But I guess my main concern is has there been a study on the economic impact to the end user with these ordinances? When it comes to, we're throwing out these ordinances, however, do we know what it's going to cost at the end of the day? Has there been?
Is that a,
That's a question.
would anyone like to answer? Mr. Landry?
I don't have a number for him, but I can promise you it's a whole lot less than what it costs when you don't do it. That I can promise you.
And I understand that.
And these same ordinances, actually, what we're proposing is less than are in effect in Lafayette. They're still building houses there. They're in effect in St. Tammany, Mandeville. They're still selling houses, building businesses there. And their ordinances are stricter than what is before us tonight. So, you know, no, I don't have a number for you of exactly what it costs, but I can give you a number of examples of subdivisions that people are almost stuck in right now, that they flood. They've spent their life savings buying a house in what they thought was a good neighborhood. Then they find out later it's not. You know, if that whole project would have cost $10,000, everybody in the neighborhood that I'm speaking of would have happily have paid it because they would have something that's worth something. Now they've spent $225,000 on a home they can't get rid of. So, and it's a good question. I mean, you know, you do want to give some thought to that. We can't just pass things and not even think about that. So I don't have an exact number for you, but in comparisons and knowing what has happened in other parishes and not just other parishes, all over the country that they've done stricter ordinances than what we're talking about here, and it hasn't killed their economy. So that's my basis. Now, in the next couple of months, hey, we're going to work on and try to get what that number is going to be. But, you know, there's things that offset that. Those people that started operating under these ordinances, the developers, they're not developing in the same way that they did before. They figured out new ways to do it, to cut those costs down, and it's not affecting them that much.
And I understand that. What concerns me is this. We're screaming that we need affordable housing, okay? Affordable housing means about a $36,000 lot. Very few of those in our area. Truthfully, from what I understand, the base in the parish to do covered ditches and everything, with the land cost and everything, you're looking at a $25,000 lot with what we're doing right now. So we put these ordinances in, it raises the cost, okay? And at that point, we're not developing. And I understand what you're saying. We're not Lafayette. We've got 180,000 people in this parish.
201,000.
Okay, 201,000, $41,000 average salary. Okay, so when we're not developing, we're dying. Okay, so I'm not saying that we don't need the ordinances, but maybe at the end of the day, maybe the parish needs to come back and do some kind of developer credits or whatever it is, because at the end of the day, it's not the developer that's going to pay more money. It's going to be the end user. And then it's going to be more taxes and more everything else. So we're developing all this stuff. And I know we don't want to spend $25 million to go get a study or whatever, but we're developing all this stuff. The parish is getting more money than they've ever gotten right now when it comes to the growth. And we need to take advantage of it now because it's not going to be forever. So we go in and we do this, then we're disenfranchising a whole bunch of people because the lots are going to be at $80,000 and above. If you put in curb and gutter, you're looking at about $50,000 base on these lots. With nothing. That's just to put everything down. So I think that is a major issue. It needs to be a player in this whole thing as well. And that's the only reason I understand. We're trying to take care of problems that have been going on for forever. We also have the opportunity now that we have more money than we've ever had before to try to take care of it. So I appreciate y'all when it comes to trying to attack this thing. You know, the other thing is going to be sewer. And we're looking at that. And that's, you know, more cost, more all of that stuff. But again, if no one's buying any houses, it doesn't matter if they flood because they're not going to be flooding in a house that they own. And we're not going to be collecting the tax base to take care of the problems we've already created for ourselves. So that's all. Thank y'all.
Jeff Murphy.
Jeff Murphy, 1200 Paris Street, Lake Charles. You've been having these meetings for y'all said 3 years. I haven't seen any improvement in drainage in our area in at least 10 years, probably 20. I live on Contraband Bayou, a little Contraband Bayou. In 1979, Mr. Walter Justin came out to my lot before we built, and we looked at it, we talked about it. We would get water in our yard about once a year. Now I get it on the average of about 4 or 5 times a year. Little Bay goes all the way on the other side of Country Club Road, comes across McNeese, it goes as far as McNeese College, all that goes to Contraband Bay. Nothing has changed. Dredging is not going to do any good. To my knowledge, we did not get inundated with flood waters in Aldrich. If we did, I don't remember it. Riley might remember it. We got some rain, but we didn't get the flood impact. We got the big lake in south. Now, all it takes is a good south wind. The bayou comes up in my yard. They deepened the ship channel in 1962. There is no other solution to Contraband Bay. Put a gate on it, get with Bo Barb, and put some pumps, and pump it out. End of story. Get the Corps responsible. You got the refineries and the Port of Lake Charles. They got plenty of money. Get them to help you pay for it. Get grants. That's not why I'm here. The reason I wasn't here 3 years ago to help you with your meeting, I'm wondering how many landowners were involved in these decisions about how you're going to address drainage. I haven't read all of y'all's new propositions, but one of them I understand is you don't want any water to leave, any additional water to leave my property. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Basically, yes.
That's stupid. I was told when I was a kid, invest in land, invest in land, invest in land. So in 1996, I did. I bought 1,050 acres on Manchester Road for my investment. Now you're telling me you're going to take a third of it away from me? Ladies and gentlemen, I can do better in China. You don't have to pay but one. Why do we even pay property tax? You want me to keep my water? You have made zero improvements. Why should we be expected to pay for the failures of addressing the drainage problems for the last 20 years? It's my understanding we got code in my area. Manchester Road, if you're not familiar with, by the airport, to know. We've got 2 sets of low lift pumps, one on Opelousas Street, that's a new one, and Coachy Cooley. Coachy Cooley takes care of Greenwich Village, Oak Park. I don't know if y'all can see it.
but you got I-10 and you got Coachy Cooley Pump north of I-10. You got the airport. My water leaves South Manchester Road at 24-foot elevation. Comes down across the Farm Road, which floods. Across Joe Spears, it floods. Manchester Road, it floods. When it gets to Joe Spears Road, it goes under Joe Spears Road, turns 90 degrees, goes under 397 at the rice mill. When it hits the airport right away, before they lengthen the strip on the airport, my area did not flood. When they lengthened the airport, they had to move the drain ditch. They wouldn't let them put concrete covers on the airport. So, in all their wisdom, they didn't have a rice farm involved up front. When it hit the airport, they go uphill 2 feet. They go around the end of the airport, come back down the side of the airport, go to 210 to tie in with the drainage from KK's Corner, from Greenwood Village, Oak Park, all of that. We compete with all that. They had 8, 9 foot elevation. I'm at 24-foot elevation. We compete to go to Coachy Cooley. That's stupid. We got low lift pumps at 2 locations. Raleigh, you couldn't have picked a better time to be here. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a pump. We got a low lift pump. Water weighs, I don't know, 8.4 pounds per gallon. I built a little old pipe in the ground, would put a shaft and a prop on it to drain my marsh. I had a 6-cylinder motor on it. I drained 1,200 acres. Raleigh come along a few years later, he had 5,500 acres. He put a diesel engine on him, he had more money. A pipe does not lift the water. It moves the water. You can move water with a boat paddle. It is 10 times more efficient than a low-lift pump. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, we can't undo the pump we already got.
We are at 6 minutes, but go ahead and.
We
finish,
can't
wrap it
undo
up
the
for
pump
us.
we already got. But any new pump we can build, let's at least build the most efficient pump we can put. Now, the Corps, I read in the paper just the other day, did a study for y'all, and they said the only way that we too flat. We too flat and we too low. So they proposed digging a ditch to the Gulf, 20 miles, I don't know. Well, I'm glad the Corps didn't do this thing for the Netherlands, because they're third underwater. Now, we can drain the water in Lake Charles, but you got to pump it since we got a deep ship channel that lets the surge come in every time we get a south wind. Well, we got to have more pumps, better pumps. Now, me being the landlord, y'all talking about how much it's going to cost this
Please
last.
wrap it up, Mr. Murphy.
It's going to cost me because you basically taking a third of my land away from me. Now, how you figure this is fair? Where are the landowners supposed to be represented? Am I the only one here? Raleigh's here. But would any of them meet with this famous board of y'all that had all these meetings?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Murphy, and we're going to ask you to wrap it up now. But yes, we have major landowners, so
Well,
as we have these next 60
Yeah,
days
I'm
of
just
comment,
curious, what
we would ask you to
landowners
come and sit with
would
us.
say it's okay to give away
So-
a third of my land?
So please come and join us at some of these meetings and make sure that you have your
So
input.
everybody else can get 20 minutes, but I get 6. I'm the landowner. I'm getting the most punishment. Makes sense
Thank
to
you,
me.
Mr. Murphy. We ain't at a football game. With that, we'll go Miss Jeannie Wise. And you get to wrap it all up for us. Unless somebody else wants to fill out a blue slip.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee here, and Mr. Brian Beam, and Mr. Alan Wainwright, Mr. Dane Bolin, Mr. Alberto Galan. You all have done a great job, but we want to do it all together and make things a little bit better. So we appreciate, on behalf of APG, that you have corresponded with us in a manner that has been professional, and we continue to do the same. We look forward to working together on the task force and making decisions together. Like you said, Mr. Entrepreneur communication, and Mr. McMillan listening to the constituents and the people. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. Ms. Robin Bissoni.
I got here late and I filled the card. I'd like to talk maybe a couple
Okay,
of
give it,
minutes.
bring it on.
Robin Bissoni, 1010 Lakeland Drive, Lake Charles, 70605. So I came in late as well. I commented at the end of June regarding the discharges from the community sewer systems and individual systems not being allowed to go to the parish road ditches. I don't know if that's been looked at or changed. So last week I went on the internet to try to find the current ordinance and didn't find that if that had been changed. Again, I just want to ask that we really spend a lot of study on what alternatives we're going to offer the public. If it's spray irrigation or other, there are going to be projects that are going to ask for variances. And the first time we start looking at variances, it's just going to snowball. I think consultation with the Department of Health and what those options are and looking at those and if they're viable options. Because a lot of parishes that put in spray irrigation as an only choice had a lot of problems after the fact.
Thank you. Mr. Wainwright, you want to speak to that, or you?
We have been in discussions with the local DHH department over this, and to some degree, without getting into much detail, there's no one requiring any kind of spray thing. There's no requirements for that. There's no change to that. And what we really are trying to attempt to build into the ordinance is, I've described before, but basically low-maintenance miles be constructed out there as new developments, new subdivisions are built. And what we're really asking is that consideration be given if there's going to be a community sewer system put into this area, any particular new development, that we really get strategic about where we discharge that system, such that we don't put treated effluent discharge into the entire road ditch system, so that we minimize the amount of road ditch system has that, because we know that is a tremendous maintenance burden on the departments that have to take care of that, if it's mosquito control, vegetation, and cleaning ditches. So all we're asking in this thing is to not just assume that we're going to build lots and discharge it into the roadside ditch, as what we've been, basically what's been going on for many, many years, to try and take a new approach. So I feel confident we'll work on the wording, make it as functional as possible, but there's a real goal to reduce that effluent coming out of every home, which really just builds high maintenance, high cost miles to take care of forever after that.
Thank you, Ms. Bissoni.
Discussion.
Mr. McMillan.
Robin is one of those brilliant minds that if we have any kind of committee meeting, I would ask that y'all reach out to her and get her opinion, because she's very sharp on a lot of different issues. You weren't here earlier and we put you on a committee. You're the president.
Been voluntold. Mr. Connor, real quick, does the state allow effluent put into their state right-of-ways?
No, sir.
I didn't think they did. Actually, in order to expand Gulf Highway,
There's a person that could answer it, Robin.
Well, actually, I think in order to expand Gulf Highway to the width that it needed, one of the issues was we had to clear up all the issues of effluent being put into the state's right-of-ways, and that could not happen until then. But if you would like to, Helen, put you on the spot, so make it good.
On the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development utility permit, a discharger has to terminate the discharge 10 feet before it enters the state highway drainage ditch. And terminate that, and then that 10 feet has to be covered with natural vegetative growth. So you can't put rock or stone or concrete. It has to be natural grass from the end of that 10 feet before it enters the state highway.
Okay.
That's my current understanding on it when you apply for a utility permit.
All right, thank you. Mr. Raleigh Newman.
Ronnie Newman. I have an office in Lake Charles, but I live just about a mile north of Cameron. I was born and raised at Big Lake, Big Pasture. My grandpa always told me, he said, Raleigh, when you get ready to build something and you talk about drainage, there's two things you have to remember. If you don't apply those two, it'll never be successful. There's a lot of truth in this. The first thing is that water doesn't run uphill. But for this body, the most important thing is when you start drainage, you have to start from the bottom up. I've watched drainage projects here start in the middle and run over here and run over there, and they are doomed to failure before they even start. I've got Twin Oaks trailer park. That big drain canal that goes through my property, I donated a half a mile. I could have gotten tens of thousands of dollars from y'all. I donated it because I felt it was my duty to do so. At Curry Road, y'all took and widened it and deepened it going north. 3 weeks ago, when we had a big rain, the water got deep here. The canal is 15 foot deep and about 65 foot wide. It was plumb full to the top. So I drive down Curry Drive where the canal, that big canal starts, and the original canal goes south. I thought you'd be a gusher. The water was barely moving. I don't know if it dumps into Moss Lake or what, but that was a wasted project because if you'd have started where it drained at Moss Lake and came up, you benefit everybody. As you move up, everybody benefits. It'll work. If you don't do that, it won't. The second experience I've had with drainage is the same thing. I had the apartments right there at Maplewood Drive at City Service. They put some little laterals coming down. When they hit Maplewood Drive, I've seen the neighbor have 4 and 5 feet of water in his house. But from Maplewood Drive all the way down towards Bayou Den, water barely moves. I took a boat. I couldn't hardly make it in a little boat, a little flat bottom boat. That's another example, fellas. If y'all gonna do drainage, for God's sakes, start from the bottom going up. It's very simple, and if you do it that way, you're doomed to failure from the very start. Because that land, that water stopped right there at Maplewood Drive. If they'd have started 2 miles further down, the whole thing would have drained. Today, I passed by, yesterday I think it was, at the airport, where they just made that big, on Lincoln Road and the airport, made a very nice looking turn and everything else there. On the west side of the road, the water at the airport was that deep in the ditch, plumb full. They had just got through redoing all that drainage to Hippolyte Coulee. But somebody must have left a stopper somewhere at the very end because it wasn't draining. I looked when I got to Black Bayou, on the east side of the road at Black Bayou, going north for a mile, the ditch was plumb full. People had water in their yard. Black Bayou wasn't very high. It stopped up there as well. So those are things that really impact the drainage that somebody needs to do something about. When I first moved on Friesen Road, we had to put our culverts a certain height, certain depth. Parish got involved. There's no such thing anymore. They used to clean the ditches. There's no such thing anymore. I see retention ponds, which myself, I think they're very overrated. There's no doubt in my mind that's not the answer. I saw where you had a 15-acre retention pond. It cost $5 million. That's a joke, expensive joke. All I'm saying is that engineers, use your common sense. Where does the water drain in South Lake Charles? It may be too late for the master plan. Start from there coming up and then the laterals to it. But when you wait until the property is all developed, it's difficult to do. Where does the water go? On the east side, the same thing. Unless you start at the bottom and work up, you're not gonna have drainage, period. I sounded pretty firm there, didn't I? But that's the God's truth. I'm telling y'all, through experience, I can tell y'all what I'm telling you is the God's truth. You've got to start at the bottom going up.
Thank you, Mr. Newman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that,
You with me?
all right.
Still a young buck.
All right, we'll have closing
Doctor
comments.
says only the good die young. I'll be here a while.
We'll have closing comments from the jurors. You want to start,
I can.
Mr. Francis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We spent a lot of time this afternoon on the terminology task force. To me, the definition of task force is knowledge. People who know what the problems are, people who know how to solve them. I think we cannot ignore that fact that we need to bring in as many people. First of all, let me back up just a moment. Thank all of you for being here this afternoon, because there was a lot of good issues discussed, a lot of knowledge put on the table. This committee has a lot of work to do. It's going to be predicated and based on the facts that you bring to us, on hands, for the lack of a better phrase, of issues that you are confronted with every day. During the process between the now and the next 60 days, I would like, Mr. Chairman, that you would call a meeting of all of the gravity drainage boards, representative from each gravity drainage board, so we can sit down with those people. I think they have a lot of knowledge that they can contribute to solving some of the problems. I think Raleigh kind of stole my line here. This is not rocket science, people. It's common sense. And if common sense doesn't prevail, we're not going to achieve our goal. And that's why we're meeting. My wife accuses me of not having a real long attention span, but I promise you, you had my attention here this afternoon, because it's important that we digest everything that you bring to us. Whether we like it or whether we dislike it is not the issue. At the end of the day, I know night comes, but what I'm going to say is that we have to look at what you're telling us and listen to what you're saying. We can't have a deaf ear to what you're saying. I got to acknowledge that Brian and Alan, or those people, have been very attentive and have open ears to listening to what we have to say, what you have to say. And we're going to have to put it together. We've got to put it together. We're talking about Calcasieu Parish here. We're not talking about Lake Charles or Sulphur. And it's important. And the reason I'm asking that we visit with the gravity drainage boards is because every facet of this parish has got a different drainage problem. We have different laterals, and all the water empties into different rivers or wherever it goes, okay? So what I'm saying is, if you know of somebody that is knowledgeable of the issues that we're trying to discuss here this afternoon, and to those that come in the future, we got to get them here. Those are the task force people, those who have the knowledge of what it's going to take to solve the problems. And I want to thank you again for being here this afternoon, because I'm going to tell you, you're here because you have a concern, and I thank you for that again. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Angelbont. Any other discussions?
I'll say something real quick in closing once more. We started this in 2005, and then Hurricane Rita hit and got on the back burner. 3 years ago, we started again and working this whole system. There has been a lot of input. We want your input over this next 2 months. Please let your voices be heard. We're going to work hard to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to say what they need to say and see how we can come up with solutions. I want to commend Mr. Wainwright. He's gone all over different states. He's really assembled a great team. He's working real hard to get our drainage issues in Southwest Louisiana, in Calcasieu Parish, taken care of. We need the city's buy-in. We need our community buy-in. But I can tell you, we have Alan Wainwright's buy-in. Thank you, Alan, for what you've done, and your staff and our staff and what they've done. And thank you for the people being here today and your input. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.